Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, wishing you a happy early start to this first day. It's the first day of September, baby, and we got so much to be looking for right now, although maybe not for some people. With that said, there's plenty to discuss today as we have a new monthly open, which means that there is many new higher term time frame ideas to be looking at, of which that can give us some insight into what to kind of expect during September, best case scenario, worst case scenario, and maybe even some hopium to top it all off as well. But I do want to say it is a bit of hopium right now. Anyways, other than that, I did want to let you know that I've been uploading like a madman on Instagram, doing some intraday updates, as well as just, trading related and crypto related content, and also unrelated stuff as well. There is a link in the description below. And then also, if you're considering any one of the programs on the Krown trading application, wait one day. Just wait one day, because we're going to be having a sale, and there you go. So tomorrow's actually my birthday, so we'll have a little bit of a birthday sale for the next week or so. All right, sweet. Let's just jump into it right now. It is time to get deep and down and dirty into these charts, starting off with the one big chart that matters most when we get a new monthly open or closure. And it is this, the monthly accumulation distribution indicator chart. So why is this chart relevant? Well, it has been incredibly accurate at getting around the major macro lows for Bitcoin all throughout Bitcoin's history, of which, realistically, we only have four prior ones. But in this case, it's been rather consistent for that full 13-year history thus far. And in this case, we have seen that all macro lows have come in when the accumulation distribution indicator has gotten reasonably close to this green horizontal line that my cursor is currently on right now. This worked in March 2020 for the old flu dump, that marked in the 2018 saga, the 2014 saga, and then even the 2011-2012 cycle as well. And then what do you know? The reason why this is relevant right now is because we have seen this come officially down to that level as of September 1st, today, that is. So in the history of Bitcoin, yes, it has been very, very consistent getting around the macro low, which is, well, I guess, a bit of hopium right there. It does not mean that we've seen the macro low just yet, however. That is not the same interpretation. It just says around this month, this next month or two, we do start to potentially see some signals of macro bottoming. I personally would say I would hold off on anything more direct than that, because just because Bitcoin might see the low around the end of this month, or maybe October, something like that, doesn't mean that I can't spend some time around the lows. So I want to give you a few examples with that. Obviously, back in 2018, once Bitcoin actually hit the low, as you can see right here, it spent 1, 2, 3, 4 months essentially oscillating around the low before you saw any sort of, legitimate move to the upside, like a momentous move to the upside in this case. But yes, it actually did get it pretty much right on the dot for that one. Same thing in 2015 over here as well. Again, around the lows, but took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, basically 9 months before Bitcoin even really started to get going to the upside. And then same thing over here in 2012 as well. So with all of that in mind, it would suggest that potentially we could be seeing around the low, like reasonably close to the low, sometime around this, basically end of this month. And in this case, I would also say that as far as forecasting a sort of statistical narrative of to where the likely low is, potentially going to be coming in, well, we can use the data right here where the accumulation distribution indicator starts to turn red. If we measure from that point to the actual low itself, there are a very interesting interplay between the average corrections that we have seen in all the past cycles. You'll notice that they're very consistent, essentially around like the 60% region. And in this case, if we were to take the average correction for all of them, it would be about 61.34%, which if we were to take from the time when this current iteration turned red, which was in May of 2022, this year essentially, well, that would put Bitcoin, theoretically in the mid $15,000 region, $15,500 to be exact. Keep in mind, these are averages, these are statistics. That means that there's going to be some variance with them. Some are going to be a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, but you can see that they have been very, very consistent for the past few cycles in getting the actual move as far as that goes. Let me get rid of this one because this is actually not relevant towards what I'm talking about. Okay, so you're wondering, it was 50%, then 65, basically 57, 62.5. And again, that gives us an average of about 61.5 or so. So that would be around $15,500. And do keep in mind that even like a 1% shift here from that from that corrective level, it does account for like $500 in price action. So it does matter. Anyways, if we go into the next chart, of which we can get a bit more color on this current trajectory, we'll go over here, which is the September analysis chart. So as far as September goes, it is no secret. This is the big meme in the market right now, or at least as far as I know it is. Then again, perhaps we're all in our own echo chambers, which is very possible, very, very likely indeed. And September has historically been, statistically been, one of the worst months for not just Bitcoin, not just crypto, but all markets, or I should say the stock market. I mean, not necessarily commodities, but stock market as well. It actually is September, although many people think it's October. And yes, we've seen a lot of crashes happen in October for sure. But if you go off these statistics, September actually does have, a greater history of just being down in general. And Bitcoin has a great history of being down in general as well in the month of September. If we look at the data right here, if we look at the stats, 9 out of the 13 overall, that's all of these Septembers that we've seen in Bitcoin history, have been down. 2 of those were actually sideways. So I'd really say more like 11 out of 13 were down or range, like basically nothing happened or big moves to the downside. And then I need to issue correction to this chart as well. So before I was measuring this incorrectly, that was on me. That's my bad. I want to issue a correction right here. The average down is actually decently less than what I was forecast or what I was calculating before. And it is more around about 21.17%. And if we were to take a standard deviation calculation of this, we would find that the first standard deviation, which represents about 68% of the results where we kind of expect them to be around, between about 13.43% all the way up to maybe even 29% or just under 29%. So running off of these numbers right here, I do want to address a few things. So first things first, let's take the average down. Now that we have the closure of August and we have the open for September, we can actually take that, as that's where the measurement does begin. We want to take it from the open and not from the high. And if we were to measure down 21% basically, where that put Bitcoin, well, that's rather interesting. $15,500. Sounds fucking familiar, doesn't it? If we were to go off of the first standard deviation, kind of create a range, it could be maybe as shallow as, or I should say a likely scenario, 13.43%, which would put Bitcoin basically on basically a retest of the current low, $17,500, maybe like $100 lower than that, something like that. So basically retesting the current lows. If we go all the way to the to the upper end of the first standard deviation, which, well, hold your breath. hold your breath, Boolaws. That's going to be about 29%, which would put Bitcoin closer to $14,000. So you can start to see, a range of likely possibility. I would say that the real range is probably closer to about $15,500. Maybe towards 14 on like a wick, something like that would kind of make sense to me, and spend some time down around there. If we go to the next chart, of which I thought that this one was rather interesting, but so I'll just give you a second to mull over those thoughts, or you can just pause the fucking video, I guess. We can go over to this chart over here. So this is the monthly stochastic momentum oscillator chart, and the reason why this chart is relevant is because, again, we have never seen a macro cycle low without the monthly stochastic momentum oscillator turning to the upside, and preferably on like these very egregious corrections coming down into this zone over here. Guess what? It's in this zone over here. Now you just needed to turn up, which we can actually forecast the price for that. What would be needed in order for it to turn up? 32,300 by end of month closure. I think that's a little bit unlikely. There can definitely be rallies in this month. Absolutely. Any rally that basically fails to get back above $23,000 is just irrelevant in my opinion, but it doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't do it before potentially going lower. But in this case, we do see it start to officially get into this region over here. So it is time to be saying, hey, if Bitcoin does start to put in at least a major low, maybe not even a macro low, but a major low, there's probably a big rally coming up around end of year. That's when maybe the midterms start to turn in, of which I think that's also the other big meme, in the sense that when midterms happen, U.S. midterms, this is typically going to be a green end of year. Not necessarily September, not necessarily October, but end of year, yes. So in this case, I do think that that was rather interesting as well, as we see a lot of these confluential factors starting to line up with each other on the higher term timeframes. Again, we have not addressed anything in the lower term timeframes. Realistically, nothing's changed in the lower term timeframes. Bitcoin's more or less held their range. We did say Bitcoin unlikely makes new lows for the month of August. That was so far so true, or that is true because August is over now, but this is like not strong price action over here. So I still do see some hidden bearish divergence alongside extremely low BBWP. So we're probably looking at a short-term move today. maybe back down to the bottom of the 4-hour range. Ultimately, though, I'm most interested in the monthly charts when I'm looking at long-term Bitcoin here. Short-term timeframes are, well, just for me to, trade and scalp, and I imagine many of the people out there as well. But other than that, I really don't have any new ideas on the short-term timeframes that already haven't been spoken about before. So this video is 9.5 minutes long or so, or about 10 minutes right now. I think it's a good place to kind of leave it off. I want this one to be mostly macro-focused. Short-term timeframes, same shit as before, basically. Higher-term timeframes, we have a lot of new stuff to be mulling over. So kind of wrapping it up, can Bitcoin rally this month? It can definitely put in a rally, but as we've seen in most Septembers, the rally does get faded, and typically new lows are printed on the month compared to the prior month. And in those average moves, well, would kind of suggest maybe somewhere around the mid $15,000 regions is where we start to see those ideas kick in. Anyways, other than that, I want to take a second to wish you the best. Happy September 1st. Much love, take care, and see you hopefully soon.